I love when the good guys win. Coming up, they were the hottest group in music. I mean, they were coming off a decade where they had 14 top 10 hits and 9 number 1 songs. And then, pretty much overnight, the band couldn't buy a hit. They were poison. A radio wouldn't touch them. They just wouldn't play them. They were totally uncool. People were embarrassed by them. So this group hid. Their lead singer actually went undercover and he wrote a song for somebody else. Happened to be recorded by one of the hottest singers of the time. But then a few days after he cut it, he started having second thoughts. In fact, he started to despise this song. Then out of nowhere, a solution came in the form of a beautiful blonde who turned that song into a duet that became one of the biggest hits of its time. It gave this legendary singer turned writer a comeback hit that most still don't know he even wrote. It's a tale of fantastic serendipity and a masterclass in creative collaboration, including an interview with one of the legends who brought it to life, coming up next. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember trying to demolish your brother or your sister or a friend in a mean game of Rockin' Sock'em Robots, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Actually, I had the Rocky and Apollo, or was it Mr. T? Anyway, make sure to click below, subscribe so you always know when our new stuff's coming out. Also, check out our new merch that we have below. We have a lot of great stuff there. You know, most people know about the roller coaster career of the Bee Gees. I mean, they were hot, and then they were ice cold. Then they were red hot. I mean, so hot that they were arguably the biggest band in the world for a few years. And then amidst the disco backlash that happened, they had a massive iceberg and became out-of-fashion pariahs. Barry Gibb once shared a story that demonstrates just how uncool the Bee Gees have become. So at the 1981 Grammys, Barbra Streisand and Barry won the Grammy for Best Pop Performance by a Duo. And the two were waiting in the wings to be called on stage to accept the award, but they weren't called to the stage at all. They weren't even presented their award. Now, Barbara was incensed. In fact, they never got the award. Later at the after party, Barbara was still seething about this. So standing nearby was Meatloaf, who was not exactly burning up the charts during that period. And the photographer asked if Meat would take a picture of them together, next to Barbara and Barry. Meat answered in utter panic, "No way, man." It was like being seen with the Gibb brothers. It was PR poison. I mean, it was crazy from a group that a short time before really had one of the greatest runs in music ever. 14 top 10 hits, 9 number 1s. Barry, Robin, and Morris may have been summarily rejected by pop culture, but they were too smart and far too talented to simply just go quietly into the night. Instead, they relied on their superpower as master lyricists, and they composed songs that could be recorded by other artists. After all, every artist, even the superstars, they needed hits, and the Bee Gees certainly knew how to craft a hit single. So Barry wrote and produced hits for his brother Andy, of course. And then there were icons like Frankie Valli, Grease, right? That was a number 1 hit. Dionne Warwick, Heartbreaker, Barbra Streisand, Woman in Love, and Diana Ross, Chain Reaction, to name a few. But one of his most famous non-Bee Gees songs came very close to never materializing at all. It was a touching love song inspired from the first posthumous novel by Ernest Hemingway titled Islands in the Stream. There are different claims by the brothers about whom Islands in the Stream was originally intended for. There's a lot of rumors about who they were. Barry said it was intended for Diana Ross. But then in a funny 2001 Good Morning America interview, Barry mentioned that the song was written for Diana Ross. And then Robin interjected saying, "Actually, no, we wrote it for Marvin Gaye. We sent it to him, but he was dead, so it was a bit difficult for him to sing it." Actually, Marvin Gaye died in 1984, a whole year after the recording. So they were off on that. Robin Gibb has also said on record that the song was stylistically written as a Tamla record. kind of a Motown soul song with a Marvin Gaye type feel, though he didn't explicitly say it was meant for Marvin. In other interviews, Barry has always stated that Diana Ross was the intended artist for the song, with no mention of Marvin. Now, the brothers were consistent on how they came up with a name for the song. Like I said, it was the title of the first novel by Ernest Hemingway that was published after his passing. It was first published in 1970, 9 years after Hemingway's death. Now, Islands in the Stream tells the story of an artist and adventurer who mirrors Hemingway himself, actually. The novel is rich with the vivid sense of life and action that is characteristic of Hemingway's writing. The phrase Islands in the Stream jumped out to Barry, and he found it to be vivid symbolism for an intense romance trying to weather the treacherous storms in life that can, break up something really beautiful. That's where it came from.
That is what we are, no one in between.
So apparently, Diana Ross didn't like Islands in the Stream or other song demos that Barry, Robin, and Morris sent to her. And the song never made it to Marvin Gaye at all. But then Barry hatched a plan. He would send it to Kenny Rogers, even though Kenny was technically a country artist. Now, the Bee Gees had already penned a #1 country song. Conway Twitty took Rest Your Love on Me to the top of the country charts in 1981.
Rest your love on me a while.
Then a year later, Heartbreaker, the song they gave to Dionne Warwick, broke the top 10 on the Billboard Hot 100, even though Barry had to talk her into singing it because she initially passed. What was wrong with people? These are great songs, the Bee Gees. The Bee Gees were certainly reinforcing their versatility as songwriters. Their songs transcended musical formats, soul, disco, country, rock. Kenny Rogers was riding higher than ever in 1982. He was on an incredible hot streak on the country and pop charts. Between 1977 and 1982, Kenny scored 18 crossover hits that made the top 50 on the Billboard Hot 100. There was a staggering 16 top 5 singles on the Billboard Country chart, including 12 that went to #1. Kenny was fresh off his biggest hit ever when he joined forces with Lionel Richie, of course, a major artist who existed well outside of the country music scene, but who somehow fit perfectly within it. There were a few songs he wrote that were kind of country.
Stuck on you, got lady.
Anyway, after co-producing Dionne Warwick's Heartbreaker album, Barry got together with Kenny. During their meeting, Kenny Rogers asked Barry if he had any songs that he could use, including the title track for his next album. Now, Barry was working with his brothers on the John Travolta film Staying Alive when he recorded some demos for Kenny, including Islands in the Stream. So the finished instrumental tracks were added to the demos, and some of the guitar, bass, and synthesizer parts from the demos are actually heard in the final mix. So Ron Ziegler had to precisely match his drumming with the drum machine used on the demos. Several musicians, including Tim Renwick, George Terry, and Ron Ziegler, who had all played on Andy Gibb's albums, were also involved in this. Now, Barry and Morris Gibb, along with Albie Galutin, they contributed both demo tracks and new recordings. So here's how this went. Islands in the Stream did not start out as a duet. It's actually quite the contrary. It was fashioned solely for Kenny's silver-haired magnetism. They recorded Islands in the Stream in LA, and after living with it for, I think, 4 or 5 days it was, Kenny flat out disliked the song. He just started to despise it. He second-guessed it. He finally went to Barry and gave him his honest assessment. He said, I just don't like the song anymore. It's missing something. Now, there was silence in the room for a couple of seconds. Kenny thought his candor had upset his friend. Then Barry spoke up. You know what we need? We need Dolly Parton.
Slowly losing sight of the real thing.
Now, that's one story. Dolly Parton moved to Nashville to chase her dreams the day after her high school graduation at just the age of 18. In 1965, she signed with Monument Records as a pop artist, but then she soon found her true home in country music. Parton's name began to shine in 1967, thanks to Porter Wagner, who featured her as a weekly performer on his TV show. That same year, she released Dumb Blonde, her first country single from her album Hello, I'm Dolly, her only album with Monument. And the song reached number 24 on the charts, and then soon after, Parton signed with Wagner's label, RCA.
This dumb blonde ain't nobody's fool.
Dolly Parton kicked off 1968 with a bang. She scored a top 10 country hit with The Last Thing on My Mind. That was a duet with Porter Wagoner. The pair were named Vocal Group of the Year by the CMA that year. And the same year, Parton released her first solo single for RCA Victor, which climbed into the top 20. October 1973 was a game changer for Dolly Parton, though. That's when she released Jolene, which remains one of her biggest hits to this day. The song has been covered by a diverse array of artists, including the White Stripes, Olivia Newton-John, Ellie Goulding, Miley Cyrus, and a lot more.
Jolene, 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 Jolene.
Dolly Parton embarked on a new journey in 1974 when she left Porter Wagoner's group. They performed their last show together in April, and she soon left his TV show. However, they, of course, remained connected. He actually continued to produce her albums from there on out. In 1977, Dolly Parton began blending pop with her country sound. That year, Here You Come Again became a hit on both the country and pop charts. It was also Dolly Parton's first song to sell 1 million copies. Dolly Parton flexed her acting chops in 1980. That's when the film 9 to 5 came out. The song of the same name became a huge hit, reaching number 1 on the country charts. It also crossed over to number 1 on the pop charts as well, becoming one of the biggest songs of that year.
9 to 5 for service and devotion.
It wasn't long before Dolly caught the acting bug again. She returned to the big screen in 1982 with the best little you-know-what in Texas. It's a word I actually can't say on this platform. Kind of lame. For the film, she recorded a second version of her iconic smash that she wrote to express her affection and gratitude to Porter Wagoner, I Will Always Love You. We all know what happened with that one. So as luck would have it, Dolly Parton was right there in the same studio where Kenny and Barry were recording when they had the idea. According to Kenny, it was Barry's idea to invite Dolly into the session, so he sent his manager, Ken Cragen, down to the lobby to catch Dolly before she left and ask, if she would join them to record a duet. Now, despite both musicians having decades of experience and Kenny having performed on Dolly's TV variety show in the 70s with his old band, The First Edition, they had never really had a chance to talk. Really talk, much less collaborate on a record. But Dolly was more than happy to oblige this. Recording a song that Barry Gibb had written as a duet with Kenny Rogers, she could not pass that one up.
Forever we can ride it together.
The spontaneity of their duet on Islands in the Stream highlights the real professionalism and musicianship of both of these legends. Walking into a room and singing with someone you don't know with very little time to kind of react, it requires skill, focus, generosity, trust, and open mind. You have to be able to respond in real time to the music that you're hearing. So just as Barry had imagined, inviting Dolly Parton to sing with Kenny Rogers as a duet, it was exactly what Islands in the Stream was missing. Kenny would say, once Dolly came in and started singing, the song was never the same. It took on a personality of its own. For Dolly, the collaboration, it felt effortless. The song turned out to be an enormous success, worthy of the combined genius of the Bee Gees, Kenny Rogers, Dolly Parton. 3 artists that you wouldn't normally before that put together.
From one lover to another.
Islands in the Stream, that was released in August of 1983 as the lead single from Kenny's 15th studio album, Eyes That See in the Dark. The single reached the top 10 in most countries around the world. It was number 1 in Canada and Austria and Australia for 10 straight weeks in Australia. It crested on the top of the Billboard Hot 100 for 2 weeks, and then the Billboard Country chart for 2 weeks. Also the Adult Contemporary chart for 4 weeks. Sold more than 3 million copies in the US and has over 1 billion streams across all platforms. The song won Favorite Country Single at the 1985 American Music Awards. 20 years later, it topped CMT's poll of the best country duets of all time.
That is what we are, no one in between.
To put the magnitude of the song's crossover achievement in full perspective here, consider this. It took 17 years before another country song, Amazed by Lone Star, reached the pinnacle of the Billboard Hot 100.
Baby, I'm amazed by you.
Cross Michelle, formerly the Fugees, released a hit in 1998 titled Ghetto Superstar, That Is What You Are, which was a hip-hop reimagining of Islands in the Stream. There's been some really fun placements of the song in pop culture. In the Netflix series Stranger Things, Sean Astin and Winona Ryder dance Islands in the Stream in Season 2's episode. I love that.
Yes, come on. Oh, there it is.
Of course, Michael and Jim sing it together in the second season of The Office. That's really funny. It also appears in Season 3 of Schitt's Creek. At the end of the episode, Moira hilariously sings along with Jocelyn and Twyla's rendition of the duet.
Conversation divided together,
So the Bee Gees never wrote another #1 hit after Islands in the Stream, and Kenny and Dolly never sang one either. Despite this, the two icons continued to collaborate, embarking on a major tour, recording numerous duets and releasing a 1984 Christmas album with some memorable cover art. The duo sang together on Real Love, that was released in 1985. That song was another #1 single on the Billboard Country Chart and in Canada. However, Islands in the Stream marked Rogers' final big pop moment. His only notable crossover hit after that was the 1984 collaboration What About Me? It's where he teamed up with James Ingram and Kim Carnes, which peaked at number 15. Dolly, on the other hand, she never broke into the top 40 again. The Bee Gees included their live version Islands in the Stream on their masterful live album and video One Night Only in 1998, and then a studio rendition in 2001. You know, the duet's magic in Islands in the Stream lies in how Dolly's voice adds depth to the lyrics. You know, the song kicks off with Kenny singing a solo verse about a chance meeting turning into deeper feelings. When Dolly, at just 5 feet tall, starts singing, the I in Kenny's verse transforms into we, merging their stories and their voices. And the soulfulness of the song, it just grows dramatically from there.
Islands in the stream, that is what we are.
In the second verse, Dolly expresses her fears of loneliness, but when Kenny joins in, the focus shifts back to we, highlighting their mutual commitment to another. This back and forth moving from individual worries to a united front, it beautifully underscores the song's tender message. It's about two unique individuals coming together, resolving their differences, and becoming stronger as a pair. It's an amazing artistic transformation of spirit and conviction. I love this song. I don't care what anybody says.
But that won't happen to us, and we got no doubt.
Kenny Rogers is one of the best-selling solo artists of the rock era. He sold over 120 million albums. And Dolly, not far behind, she was actually inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame a few years back. She just released a new duets album.
Jolene, Jolene, Jolene.
Kenny retired from touring with the Grand All-Star Concert in Nashville in 2017. He passed away sadly on March 20, 2020 at the age of 81. The following day, Dolly posted an emotional tribute calling him a wonderful man and a true friend.
I can't think of anybody I would rather sail away with.
That's it.
I had a chance to interview Kenny Rogers about Islands in the Stream and his chemistry with Dolly Parton. Here's what he said.
Barry Gibb didn't write it for me, incidentally. He wrote it for an R&B artist, but I didn't know that and I didn't care. I went in, so we're in the studio. I owned a studio in LA. And we go in there and we're recording and I'm singing it and I'm singing it. Finally, I looked at Barry and I said, Barry, I don't even like this song anymore. And I swear, he said, we need Dolly Parton, just like that. And my manager at the time was Ken Cragen. He said, I just saw her downstairs. I said, well, go get her. So he went down there and Dolly came marching in the room. And once she came in, the song was never the same.
Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to leave us a comment about this amazing duet from the 80s. One of the greatest country duets, one of the greatest duets ever. Share some of your memories below. What do you think about their duet? What do you think about the Bee Gees and about that turnaround? I love a great comeback. And of course, we told the story when they came back in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Just great story. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe below. We would love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords. Down the truth, my friends.